Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday night Bible study. I hope you're all well, and thank you all for joining us. I hope you'll be blessed by what I have to share with you tonight. I've titled what I want to share with you as being prospering in a time of famine. And I just want to share for a few minutes what provoked me to want to speak about this. Because it's a subject that I'm very passionate about, and I'm obviously looking every day at what is going on, and I just felt, yeah, we need to talk about this, and so I'm going to talk about it tonight and tomorrow and next Tuesday night, and I hope that it will encourage us all to start to see things in their proper perspective, because I believe it's a time where we need to, as children of God. And quite often we get our heads turned and we forget about the way God sees it. And I know we've been doing loads and loads of teachings over the last weeks in preparation for basically the time of going back out into the world when the restrictions are lifted. But this is a piece I believe that I want to finish off with it, really, because we have PJ finishing with his teaching on the 7 churches next week, and this will also finish this part of what I want to share about tonight. It'll be finished next week, and so I believe we'll have reached a point of what I would call preparedness as we are released back into the world, and because the restrictions obviously have started to lift. And each day we're hearing good news about how we can get out and how we can move about again. And but what we're facing into, I want to talk about it basically from a certain perspective tonight and next week. And hopefully it will encourage you. It will certainly wake you up maybe to start to see things as God might want you to see it, and so that you will be prepared. I suppose when I was thinking about this before I just come on, I'm reminded of, when an army is going to war, it prepares very well, but it never knows how it's going to actually operate till it's out in the field. It's the same with a team. Obviously, when you're preparing them, and I know this from coaching, that you think you've prepared a team very well, but it's only when they're on the field that you begin to realize and see the way the preparedness and its impact. And I suppose for me, what I am passionate about is that we have put a lot of teaching input, obviously, and encouraged you to go and read the Bible and look at all the different things that God would want us to look at from a whole variety of different angles, so that basically when we go back into the world, we are prepared to be the best that God would want us to be, and to walk with Him. In this case, what we're looking at is to be walking with the Lord, because we know that if we're not walking with the Lord, then we're in a bad place because of what's going on. And that is really what's driving me to want to do this, because I believe with all my heart that we're facing into a time of famine out there. And by that I mean, does it mean that we mightn't have enough food to eat? No, I'm not saying that. I think of scarcity, of lack, because of what I see going on. And remember, my business is in the financial space, and for years I've asked the Lord, going way back, Lord, why did you take me out of my own background with training, which was food, and bring me into this crazy place of finance? And I had to obviously relearn or learn for the first time a world that I knew nothing about. And it's, I suppose, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, through mistakes that I was making and what I was learning as well, and the experience of dealing with so many people who were coming for advice and whatever, that I began to realize that I believe God had brought me into this world of finance and whatever, because He wanted me to see what was going on in that world. Because I can tell you, whatever problems that come up ahead, whatever constraints that we have, I tell you, they will end up being all about money. And that's why the famine will be money. And so that's why I wanted to come out with this for the next 2 weeks, because we need to prepare to be able to face up to this and to be able to have victory over it, because we have victory, not in our own strength, but in the strength of Jesus Christ, our Saviour. And so that's a little bit of an entree into what I wanted to, why I wanted to do this. And as I said, I hope it will encourage you. It will certainly challenge you to reflect, but in a good way. So, just for a few minutes, we have done all the talking about, what's going on at the moment. And there is no doubt about it that, we have never seen the likes of what's going on at the moment. There's something, I believe, significantly spiritual in what's going on. And it is related, I believe, to Jesus coming back. And, we have again given, and we're putting out lots and lots of teachings, especially to the 7 churches on a Thursday night now, about the preparation of church for Jesus coming back. And so we're in that phase, and I believe personally, and everyone has their own view of this, that we can't be far away. And so the good news, obviously, as we get nearer to that time, is that that we'll be raptured. And so for that reason, it's the first point that I want to make. We need to walk closely and be close to God and be led by Him and directed by Him, because if we're not, we're going to be directed by the world. And so that is the first, I suppose, the 4 steps that I want to emphasize. 2 we'll deal with tonight and 2 more next week. But the first one is how important it is that we are led by the Spirit and we walk with God in these troubled times. And that's where our victory is, not anywhere else. And so, and again, we've done loads of teachings over the weeks about that, but I want to come at this from a slightly different perspective tonight and finish it off next week. So we are in these crazy times, and one of if we go back and look at what we were told in Matthew about what's going to be happening at these when we're coming near to the end times, we're talked about. I've written down here 4 different things he's mentioned. We have famines, wars or rumors of wars, famines, earthquakes and pestilences. We've just experienced the pestilence and we don't know where that's going. Is it going to revisit? Is it going to go away? Or what way is it going to go? But we have the experience of going through what a pestilence, when it invades a country or a people, looks like. And it's not pleasant. We know we have victory over it, and by the grace of God, I have not come across anybody from a Christian perspective that basically has been hit with COVID, certainly not dying over in our community, and we thank God for that, because that's His promise, and that's achieved through faith in Jesus Christ. So the earthquakes, I think they've got kind of talked down a little bit because the COVID is so dominant, but I do understand that there's been loads and loads of earthquakes around the world that we have maybe not even heard about. The famines, well, we know at the moment that in Africa there is a major attack of locusts in one of the countries, I can't remember, is it Uganda or one of those places. But the consequences of that, they've eaten up all the crops. The consequences of that are going to come back in time, because the food that they've eaten will be missing from the tables of the people who it was intended for. And that's up ahead, and we'll come back. So all those are in existence at the moment, and so they're all predicted in Matthew basically as being a sign of the times. Now, the Bible tells us in Matthew, and as Jesus Himself said, He said, "Watch therefore, for you know not the day nor the hour." He said, "Watch therefore, for you know not the day nor the hour." So and this is again why we've been doing all the prep work, we have been watchful to seeing what is happening and talking about what's happening and teaching about what's happening. And I hope that you all have been spending time yourselves talking to the Lord to actually see with your spiritual eyes what happens. Now, that word watch there in that, I was looking into the back counter, because it says watch. And what does He mean by watch? Because, he does mean watch, obviously, and to be, be conscious of what's going on around us. That is in the Bible as being indicative of end times coming. But actually the word is much more deeper than that. And it is, I've looked at here from Strong's, the Greek word for it is egeiro, E-G-E-I-R-O, and I was fascinated with the description that it actually it described it as, because it said it's the general attitude of alertness. So there's more than just looking around. There's an alertness that we're ready, because that's what you do when you're watchful. You're ready, right? There's expectation. So the general attitude of alertness on the part of the believer, right? And so that's what he's saying, how we need to be alert or whatever, in view of actual and imminent tests of his spiritual life. A view of actual and imminent tests of his spiritual life. And the last part of what it describes is inculcated through the verb. So what I'm reading into this is that it's saying we're alert and whatever, but we're alert also knowing the challenge in our spiritual lives. And what have we been talking about all the months gone by? Exactly that. Our spiritual lives, so that we're living in victory and not in the world. We have been talking about it, but that's what that word means. Watch. That we are of the imminent tests of a spiritual life of the believer. And it says there, it's inculcated through the verb. That means that is a meaning put through that word, that verb. Basically, watchful, and because of the imminent tests in our spiritual lives. And that is amazing that's what that word means. So I think we should take that to heart and realize that it's not just reading the news every day and saying, oh, that's going on now, but sure, that's in the Bible over here. It's much deeper than that. It's us being prepared for what's coming up ahead, walking with our Lord, the first step in this prosperity in a time of famine. And so that is what that is about. So moving on from that, there's no doubt about it, and as time goes on we hear more about this, the impact that the lockdown for the length of time that it's been is starting to manifest. We hear more people talking about it now. Some people, it was trauma. So and even in Christian circles, fear is a huge issue. The not knowing what to do every day, the boredom, right? Now, for a Christian, for somebody who's walking with the Lord to be bored, I would not understand that personally, because there is so much that when the Holy Spirit is living within you, you cannot be bored. It's impossible. There's too much to learn. There's too much to know. There's too much to see with our spiritual eyes. There's too much relationship, fellowship time with Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit in our quiet time. There's too much action there. We have now, Mary and I, we have never been as active, and I'm not saying physically active, although we do train on a regular basis, but I'm talking about active spiritually, mentally, during this lockdown period. And that has been powerful, right? And but many have been in trauma. So one of the things to say about that is that as we go out now, having come out of this cocoon for 2 months, over 2 months, that as we come out of it, and we're basically, when we come out of that, the first thing that human nature wants us to do is to go back to the routines that we are used to over our life. Go back to the routines. Go back to the way we were. Go back to the way we were. How about a situation where we want to go on to who God wants us to be? Because we're growing continually, all the time, from glory to glory. But that is a natural thing that I believe we all, Christians or children of God or not, that we all have an inclination to go back to the routine that we were so accustomed to and so used to for all our years of life. Right? We love routine. We love routine. That's for sure. There is a comfort in it. There is a knowing in it because we know that the practices that we have, and there's a form of security in it. And that's another feature. So we love to go back to the routine. And that's what most people, certainly the world, will want to go back. You'll hear them talking about that. Go back to the way we were. Well, I'm saying to church and everyone listening tonight, let's not go back to the way we were. Let's go on to where God wants us to be. because he is forever moving us on. We never stay still. We never stay still. So let's move on to that place. Now, so for the world and for those of us who don't accept what I'm saying here, the question that has to be asked is, what happens if I'm not able to go back to that routine? What happens? Most people hate change. They don't like change. They're slow to change, right? And can you see change as your opportunity, as an opportunity? Can you see change as an opportunity instead of seeing it as fear and fear of the unknown, having to step out in this and basically and not see what God might be doing in your life? We need to have an awareness of this. God has our back all the time, right? I'm just reminded now of Peter's teaching last Thursday night about the eagle. You know, those little baby eagles. They were happy. We'd be like people wanting to go back to the nest to be fed in the nest. The big rabbits or whatever, as Peter was saying, dropped into our beaks. But when the nest is gone, what do? We have to learn to fly. And we are able to fly, not in our strength, but under the eagle's wings with Jesus. That's where we need to be, right? And so, but few like change. Most people hate change. And I was just as well, in my business, we do a lot of work. We've done a lot of work over the years with regard to redundancy. So say companies leaving people go and cutbacks and whatever. You know, we did a lot with Lingus and all those companies we handled. You know, many, probably a few hundred over the years. And so, you know, typically when people would come with to get advice about their redundancy, there's depression, there's despair, there's if you're especially maybe 55, which you would be, or in your 50s, you think that now that this is the end, I'm over the hill now, and all they see is that redundancy as a death sentence. And I have always, since we started dealing with them, challenged those people, and I've watched what has happened, and it excites me every time, because I do ask them the question, what if this is not what you're telling me it is, but if it's your opportunity? And the typical question I get back is, what do you mean? How could it be? They don't see it, because their mind is so set on the change that's imposed upon them by the redundancy that they don't even want to look at what's up ahead. And so I would challenge them and engage with them with that. And it is truly amazing to me, and it still I know exists today, that when you get people's minds off the difficult situation and the rejection maybe that's felt as a result of redundancy and whatever, and to start to look at the opportunity. Now, when you bring God into this equation, it becomes much more exciting, because God has a plan for our life. So if he's making you redundant over here, then it means that he's moving you on to somewhere else place, that he's not putting you in the dustbin, and he's not putting you into the back room to stay there till it's time to go to be with him. No, that is not the way God works. We've taught enough about that, so we know that that's not true. So, but that is a natural way of looking at things. And so, I don't know what's up ahead for any of us as we go out, but as long as we stay close to God and walk with him, he will direct our paths, and it will not be for any bad thing, it will only be for good thing. So whatever bad news comes, it's only for opportunity for good news on another side. He can turn, and we've gone through all the teachings with this, how to deal with a crisis and all the rest of it over the weeks. So, you know, but that is a feature, again, and I'm just sort of going through this and saying, looking at human nature the way it is, because we still carry a human nature until we go to be with the Lord. And so we have those attitudes, those feelings, those reflections, those mindsets, and many of us basically need to change those mindsets so they start to look at the situations differently than what they would as the world would if they were in the world. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this teaching, to get us to ramp us up again, to start to change, look at things differently, despite what's going to be happening up ahead of us. So, yeah, one of the things, so now I want to talk about what's up ahead of us as I see it. And again, just looking, and we all see it, because maybe it's all that there's some factual information we can put ahead. And so basically, there is a statement that we regularly hear said, and you've heard it in the media, that when you give up part of your freedom, you never get it back. That's been out there. It's been said, that when you let go of a freedom that you had, you very seldom get it back. And to an extent, if you look at that statement in terms of what's been taken from us by way of freedom, it's a lot. And so the question is, are we going to get that freedom back? If we do get it back in the way that we had it, are we back into a routine? Are we forever changed because of the experience that we've gone through? That is a question we need to ask ourselves. And I believe, no matter how we look at this, change is upon us. I really believe that. And so, if we look at what we're facing out into, right? Even within church, the whole social distancing issue we've been looking at, because we're supposed to be able to hold service again at the end of the month, the 29th. And when you look at the facilities that we have and look at the rules around them, basically the numbers are so constrained that it's say, oh my God, how are we going to solve this problem? So that is one rule that's already been established, social distancing. Now, will that be taken away, or will it be with us? It is with us today. So you'll hear in the television, even this evening in the news, now that the shops are open, the whole experience of being out there, is so different. I heard Julie telling me today she went to a shop in Navan, to electrical shop, and she said the fellow was standing at the door and he says, oh, why are you here? What do you want? And she wanted to go in to check something, but now she was being stopped at the door and challenged about what she wants. She can't browse in the shop anymore. So she must know what she wants before ever she comes to that door of the shop. And there is a new change. And how long is that going to last for? Because your freedom to walk into a shop, to browse around, to decide what you might want among several options, you don't have that choice anymore if this is what's going on. And, so that you're moved on all the time in your shopping, that you don't dilly-dally in the shops. That is going to be traumatic for a lot of people, because many go into shops traditionally in the old routine, and they hadn't made decisions about what they wanted, right? Now that has been completely changed. And, I'm going to tell you a little bit of story from a marketing point of view that makes this point very valid. I don't know if you'll have seen it, I think in Woody's is an example of this. The big blue multiples, Tesco's and all those, they have monitored and watched the decision-making process of all the consumers who go in to shop at them, down to a T. And they would say that most people, when they go into the shop to shop, have not made a decision about what they want to do, what they want, right? And that's why there has been a change of emphasis in the marketing and advertising of product. Because if it's out there on television, you're seeing it at home, you'll remember. But by the time you go into the shop, you won't have made a decision whether to go in to buy that. Now, that is not 100% true, but it's in the main true, right? And that's why if anyone goes into Woody's, I think it's Heaton's was another one, where you see the screens, little screens, monitors, beside the shelf space where you might be going to look to shop. And what that is doing is, it's actually showing you options now to buy, prompting you, advertising to you, right at your point of sale. So that is evidence that, they recognize that most people coming into the shop haven't made a decision what to buy, such that they put in these small monitors on the shelves, you'll have seen them, where they're promoting to you in the shop right at your point of sale. And the reason for that is because they know that's where you make your decision. Now, How does that sit with you and me when you come to the door of the shop and the fella says, what do you want to buy? What are you here to buy? To the point where he's nearly blocking you going in. Can you see the change that it's going to make in people's lives? People will be traumatized by that because they're forced to plan now. We shouldn't be, because we should basically go and find another way to get through this system that's there at the moment. And of course the big question is, this social distancing and all that goes on with this, how long is it going to last for? And from it looks like it's going to go on, they said, I've heard them saying it, for the next 2 years. Now if that's the case, think of life back in the world in comparison to the routine we've had. It's a complete changed world, for sure. And so that's what we're going back out to, I believe, based on the current legislation. The other one then is that basically assembly restrictions, that's to do with church. That, under the laws, we can't meet in the church in the way that we used to. I heard this evening in the news, there was a priest running in Limerick in one of the churches who normally house 900 people in a mass. And they have put in all the guidelines or whatever, but the max they can put in now is 100 people, right? And so in a capacity of 900. And what a change that is. So we're all going to be challenged with this, and we need to hear God's direction for finding new ways to walk in the world out there while all this thing is going on. The other thing we need to realize is that as part of all this controls that have been put in is that our movements are being monitored in a way that they've never been before. That is for sure. They're being monitored, right? And so that's something we need to be conscious of. And I mentioned already about the whole challenge of redundancies, because when we go back out to the world, again, and we're starting to hear this now on the television. Now, I'm telling you this because I'm creating, I feel like, a view of what the world might look like out there. And then we got to get to the place where, basically, how do we operate in that environment? Because, we don't see the challenge in it, we see the opportunity in it, right? I'll tell you one thing that I can see, because the world, when it's faced with that, basically, is going to be affected greatly because they're under so much control. Man likes to be free. And so that's going to create a lot of depression. It's going to a lot of objection out there, basically by those who are controlling the entrance to shops or whatever it is. But there's a huge opportunity for us to be good witnesses, to witness to those people, to not to be caught up as the world would be in challenging the men at the door, maybe, that we're actually able to help those who are trying to. And there's opportunity for outreach that we need to keep our eyes open to, because you might find that there are people around you who are in bad places, keeping them out of front, but when challenged, basically they melt, and there's your place to share with them the good news. So that is another feature of what we're going to be doing. The redundancy, I believe that when people go out then into the world again, that, the businesses themselves, there's a lot of people who are going to go back and they're going to find their jobs are not there. Because the businesses basically aren't viable anymore. And, the more we look at this in terms of pushing on the businesses to implement COVID restrictions, nobody is talking about their viability. So if I've a shop that needs to turn over X per day to break even or make profit, and because of COVID, not because of customers, because of COVID, I can't get that throughput through the shop, how am I going to survive? So what that means is that there's a play out in this, that in time those businesses will collapse. It might take a year, it might take for 18 months, it will start to collapse. And that is, then you have more people back on the dole queue. And these are realities, I believe, which we need to see out there. Now, I believe that because with what's going on as well, that obviously with those redundancies and whatever, there's going to be income reduction. Because if people are made redundant, they obviously don't have the same level of income as they used to have. And so this is where I'm saying this ultimately feeds back in, ultimately, to the word money. And we'll get to that as we build this out. Another feature of it is that basically and this is one of the things that amaze me every day, because you see the bank advertising, and we want to support you and we want to help you, and we have increased the moratorium for your mortgages for another 3 months. But you need to realise what's happening here, because that support that they're offering you is another loan. It's going to bring you into deeper debt. The extra moratorium that they're giving you, or that they're not going to, you need to realise what's happening there. That hasn't been forgiven. That is being capitalised at the end of your mortgage. That's what will happen there. And when you look at that, that actually makes the bank more money in the longer term than it does had you paid it during the period of COVID. Imagine that. But that is what's happening. You do the maths on that and you'll see what I mean, right? So that if you have maybe say it was £1,000 a month of a mortgage and you're out for 3 months and you take 6 months, 6 grand, right? Well, 6 grand would have included the interest and the capital for that 6 months. But now they've capitalised the whole 6 grand, interest and capital. Now what are you doing? You're going to be paying interest on the interest at the back end of your mortgage. But the world is going around and don't see this. And the bank all the time come telling you, oh look, we want to support you, we want to help you. We need to get real, church and the people of God, to see what's going on. This is Satan's territory. I'm not saying the people in the front end of the banks are bad. The spirit behind it is what I'm talking about. But we as children of God need to have our lights on so that we see what's going on. So, the outcome of all that then for you and me is the possibility that debt is going to rise up, right? DEBT, I mean, that you're going to end up having more debts that you have to sort out with less income. So these are things that push you into a crisis. And we did have a teaching on that for the last two weeks on how to deal with crisis, but that's an issue. I believe 2 other things that are going to happen, and I'm saying I'm watching that from our business point of view, which is, I believe, what God brought me in to be able to see, and I have a acute awareness of this, because there's going to be an economic collapse, because the states, the governments in the countries can't sustain what's going on. It's impossible. Right? And so if that economic collapse happens, that's going to further capitulate this whole problem that I'm talking about. And that's a world we're facing into. Now that might seem to be a gloom and doom scenario for what I'm sharing here. I'm only sharing it because, that is a time of famine that I'm speaking about. But I want to tell you, God prospers his children in time of famine. But we need to be aware of this to know how, so that we are not caught up in that famine, right? So the last part that I wanted to tell you about is that, if let's put it this way, if I'm a restaurant and basically I'm used to having 100 covers, say people sitting at the meal, say on an evening, and now COVID has come in and said, well, I can only have 30 or 40. So I can't make money on that because I need 100 to break even. So what's my option then? I either close down or I increase the prices so that I make the equivalent as if I had 100 covers. And what is that going to do? It's going to trigger inflation. Now, I'm captured for many, many years by something that's in the Bible that speaks about not inflation but hyperinflation. Because it says in Revelations that at the end time, a loaf of bread will be sold at the city gate for a day's wages. Can you imagine that in today's times? A sliced pan being bought in the supermarket for a full day's wages. That's what the Bible talks about. You can check out, they're in different currencies and that, but work it back to what does it mean today. That's what it means today. I've researched it and I know that this is true. But if that's where this is going, how is the world going to operate in that? And of course, where we get to in that situation is the world, basically, when the beast comes along, and we said, well, look, we'll sort this out. You won't be able to buy and sell unless you have the mark of the beast. And that's ultimately where this is going. But please God, you and I will be out of here by then. So, but that's another feature of what's happening. Watch this space. Inflation will start to kick in. And if that kicks in, it means prices go up, right? It doesn't mean income starts to go up. The value of money starts to deteriorate. So that's another piece. Now, enough of the gloom and doom. I wanted to paint the famine picture. It's a different famine because basically it doesn't mean that you mightn't be able to get food in the shops. But the whole environment that you're used to living in, that routine of comfort that you had, is going to be taken away. And now you're going to be faced with having to walk with your God, right, as He directs you for your prosperity. Because you see, in 3 John 1:2, the Bible says that I pray that you may prosper in all things, even as your soul prosper. So clearly it's God's will that you prosper. He didn't say anything there, but in a time of famine, I don't want you to prosper. No, He didn't. He said He wants you to prosper, full stop, if you'll walk with Him. And so that is the attitude of God. He wants to prosper His children in the worst times. And you know, when you look at the whole Bible, and we could spend night after night here going through the stories in the Bible where God has prospered His children in times of famine. You know, typically famine in the world came when either God's children disobeyed Him and they were sent into captivity, and obviously there was famine left behind, or sometimes He brought His judgment on the enemies, right? And you know, that is a way that it has been throughout history. But all the time when God's people stayed close to God and walked with Him, He blessed them even in times of famine, right? And so I've just have a load of them down here that I wrote down, basically where He's taken His children and He's blessed them. You know, there is a proverb in 13:22 that I want to also say, which is very important in this. It says in Proverbs 13:20, the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the just. That's the just is you and me, right? So there's a transaction that has been going on for centuries, thousands of years in the Bible, concerning the wealth of the wicked being given to God's children, right? When God, for example, took His people out of slavery in Egypt and took them across the way, He was taking them to where? The land of milk and honey in Canaan, right? And who was in Canaan? That's where the giants were. That's why half the God's people were afraid to go up there. But what was going to happen? Those were the wicked, and they were going to be defeated. And they were defeated, because when Joshua went in with those that he took up there, they defeated all those, such that the people up there were afraid of the God's people. They were afraid of them, and they came up with all kinds of ways to try and integrate with them, lest they be all annihilated. So there is evidence of God blessing His people in times of famine, right? And you know, when you look at God taking them out of the Israelites out of Egypt, there's 2 or 3 situations there on the journey where you see again God's blessing. Like when they went across the Red Sea, they had no food, but God intervened and supplied food through manna and then through quail. So He fed them. And no matter what the circumstances in this world as we go out there, God is your provider, and that is a huge word, Jehovah Jireh. He spoke that first when He was speaking to Abraham, when he was about to sacrifice Isaac, his only son, his son. And the Lord stopped him and He said, there's a ram there in the bushes, you sacrifice him, for I am Jehovah Jireh. Now that Jehovah Jireh means God, your provider. God, your provider and my provider. So He is the provider of our needs, whatever we want. And as we go on the next week and finishing by tonight, we'll develop that a little bit more, God your provider, and how to secure His provision. And so as we go out, then you have I've told you about Egypt. Then Elijah, right, a powerful man of God. He was in the land of his famine. There was no rain for I don't know how many years it was, but God fed him. Now he told God he was hungry, and you've heard me talking in the last few weeks about this in the context of dealing with a crisis, because God fed him. He told him where to go to the brook Jared, remember, and He told him to get water, and the ravens would feed him there, and he went there and he was fed there. And so there is further evidence that God will bless and He won't be lacking in a time of famine, because there was famine in the land. I'm brought back again to basically when Jesus was on earth, when the people were hungry, right? After listening to his word, he went and he took 5 loaves and fish, and they all got fed, and there was surplus left over. Jehovah Jireh, your provider. There's no famine when God is at work. I'm thinking of another one then, which says when the Peter and the apostles were out fishing, they caught nothing. And he told them, now this is fascinating, because they'd come in, they'd caught nothing. And then Jesus tells them, go back out and throw the net on the other side. And, can you imagine how you'd be if you were Peter? And, the boat was there and the net was down that side. And they caught nothing all night, it says. But then he comes and he says, well, throw the net down the other side. And they did. Behind the other side, the nets nearly broke with all the fish there behind. But if you think about the boat, like the distance between one side and the other in water was nothing. And the fish, there wasn't a wall underneath the boat that divided the fish. God, your provider, he provided the fish, but they had to be obedient to what he told them to do. And that is the key to us as we go along in famine times, when things are difficult, that God will bring us our prosperity. He will lead us to prosperity, and we need to trust him in this. And that is why I'm sharing this message, because we need to trust him for our prosperity in a time of famine, right? I'm just looking what here. Yeah, I said at the end of the day that this all will come back down in our lives as we go out there. I can tell you where it's going to end up, because it's going to end up, the impact on you and me will end up with money at the end of the day. Be it debt, lack of it, you mightn't have debt, but you mightn't have as much money. It will come back down to that money issue, right? Because that's how Mammon, that Satan uses, is one of the principalities, to take control of the world for his end time purpose. And we need to see that. And so the question has to be asked then is, and some of you that were in the student program will have heard me ask this when we do the money management teaching. Basically the question is money controlling you, or are you controlling money? Because if money is controlling you, you're going to be caught up in that trap. And there is the root of why I want to do this teaching and next week's teaching. Because I don't want to see anyone being controlled by money. I stand before you as one who was controlled by money for a long number of years of my life. And, sorry my phone is, a long number of years of my life, until through revelation and through experience, God showed me how to turn that to the way he wanted it. Because he wants you and me to control the money. Think about that for a minute. That is an incredible change. And say, well, how could you do that? Because it seems that it's always, I have no control over it. Well, watch this space and let's keep working, because you have to, God wants you to be in control of money. And that is at the root of what's going to come out of where we are going, I believe, towards over the next 2 or 3 years. That money will be the focal point of attention, which we need to deal with and understand how to deal with, so that you prosper in this time of famine, right? And that is a big question you need to ask yourself, ponder it and talk about it, and we'll develop it and talk it through then as we go along with the teaching. There is another statement that I'm going to make. God will not give you the increase until you learn to possess what you have. He won't give you the increase until you possess what you have. So if he's giving you the increase in the thing you need most, money and other things for your provision, if you're going to be loose in how you possess what he's given you, in other words, are you allowing Satan to take it all away? So God has given it to you, but Satan is taking it all away, so you end up with nothing, and you're from hand to mouth all the time. That's what happens. That's what Satan does. But if you don't see him, but you and I can stop that today by taking authority and realize, and that is part of taking possession of what we've been given. And when we have then he can give us the increase. Think that makes sense. That if you had anybody that you wanted to give stuff to, I don't know what it might be, well, give him money. But if you thought he was going to squander the money, would you give it to him? The answer is no. But if you thought he was going to do well with the money, you might be happy to give it to him. And that's the same way with God. So the question then is, how do you start to take control of money? That's the big question. How do you start? Well, this is the first step in your breakthrough. So I said there was 4 steps in this whole teaching. The first one is, we better walk and be led by the Spirit of God. So you need to be in your quiet place, writing down what he's telling you every day, testing him out, taking your steps, because he'll bring you in directions for your breakthrough, right? The second one is that you need to start to take control of money. And how do you do that? Well, the first thing is that God said, the gold and the silver are mine. That's in the scriptures. The gold and the silver is mine. He also said that the cattle on 1,000 hills are mine. That kind of speaks of most of the wealth of the world. And he said, they're mine. There's nothing that you and I have that we did not receive. Think about this. There is nothing that you and I have that we did not receive. We got it from somewhere. Most of us are going around owning all we have, right? And this is a point of breakthrough that we need to realize and change our attitude, because the reality is, and the people have said is, we'll go out of here as you came in your skin. And so all that you're striving for and trying to control and fight with is going to be left behind. So that's something, a release, if you like. So the bottom line is, you do not own what you have. And so the question is, well, if I don't own what I have, then what's the story with it? Because that's a big statement. You do not own what you have. Why? Because Jehovah is your Jireh. Jehovah is your provider. And if you start believing and acting and walking as one who owns what you have, then you miss the whole relationship with God. And that is the second point that I wanted to bring out tonight. And the last 2 I will deal with next week. Now, I've kind of gone on a bit and brought over old ground a little bit here tonight, but I felt it's necessary. So I hope that you've captured the structure of what I'm trying to bring in next week. So if you don't know, we're going to start, well, who owns it and how do I start to take control of it? Because you have to take control of it. And so we'll deal with that next week. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something from it. The recording of this is going to be on your YouTube channel. Please listen to it again and go to the scriptures that I've referred to here. I'm not as sophisticated in my technology as PJ is, so I haven't been able to put it up. And to be honest, even if I had it put up, you'd probably have forgotten about it already. So from the tape, the recording, you'll have the scripture references, the subject references. Go and read it for yourself and see what God is going to say to you. So thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us here tonight, and look forward to PJ's teaching on the church in Philadelphia next Thursday night. So tune in, and good night and God bless you, and have a good few days till we see each other on next Thursday night. Thank you.